Okay, so we're going to get started. So welcome to our presentation titled Understanding Your Market and Your Competition. Before we get into our guest speaker and into our presentation today, I just want to talk a little bit about the Innovation Quarters and the Regional Business Center, your host for today's event. So at the Innovation Quarters, we offer a 6-month-long incubator program, and this helps new startups succeed with one-on-one support from our mentors, a collaborative workspace, as you can see in the photos, programming and training, and along with networking and events. Our next incubator program is going to start in the fall, so please, if you're interested, go ahead and apply on our website at innovationquarters.ca. And the space is also available for rent. So if you do have a business or if you happen to work for somebody else and you are working from home but want to get out of your home office, I encourage you to come and check out our space. We have desks, and then we also have private meeting rooms and a boardroom as well. And our co-hosts for today are the Regional Business Center. They're a one-stop shop for information and guidance on starting, expanding, and operating a business. So they serve the greater Sudbury, Espanola, Manitoulin Island, and the surrounding areas, and they do confidential one-on-one consultations, business plan support, market research, and business registration. So if you just want some support with like, how do I start a business or how do I register a business, they're able to help you with all of that. So you can take a look at their website and also the available programming that they have at regionalbusiness.ca. And we have a few upcoming webinars. We have, apologies, I just noticed I have an error, Mastery Market Research, that's today. However, the date for June 13th is, yes, sorry, apologies, I'm just noting this error right now, but Crosscut Distillery is correct on June 20th, I believe. Yes, planning social content. And then we have crafting a winning business plan for June 27th. So for those of you looking to create a business plan, I encourage you to attend that. Planning social content will be really exciting with Crosscut. They have incredible social media, so I encourage you to go take a look. And you can sign up to any of our webinars on our website as well at innovationquarters.ca or on the Regional Business Center's website. We share a calendar of events. Okay, so today, John Cole, thank you so much for being here. I'll do a quick introduction. So John Cole is a lifelong martial artist. He attained his first black belt in 1994, opened his first martial arts academy in 1998. He's traveled all over the world. And if you take a look at his socials, he's always somewhere for some competition, but not only for learning and competing, but also for learning about his business. He's also been fortunate enough to have visited leading schools, learned from some of the industry's top business consultants throughout the years. And in late 1990s, Sudbury MMA started a small school with 6 students renting space in an elementary school gym. And now at their current location, they have over 300 students in a 4,000 square foot building. Sudbury MMA, I can vouch for it myself because I do also happen to attend there, and it is a wonderful place. Definitely have been in the best cardio shape of my life. Thank you, John, for that. So welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. And I'm super grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So why don't we start a little bit about, talking about yourself. I did a brief introduction, but, how has your career and your experience, just as a fighter, made you want to become an entrepreneur?
So I started martial arts basically when I was 11 years old. And it's been a beautiful journey for me. Like Mel had mentioned, I had the opportunity to travel the world and, not only compete, but learn from many, many different people. So from a young age, I always knew I wanted to do martial arts, and I knew that I wanted martial arts to be a significant part of my life. One of my favorite stories is I remember like finishing college and I went to Japan. And when I got back from Japan, I remember my father saying, okay, so, now that you've done this karate thing, like what's next in life type thing, like, and I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, like that karate is something you do when you're a kid, martial arts is when you're young, and now like, it's time to get a job. What are you going to do? And I'm like, no, Dad, I'm going to keep doing martial arts my whole life. And I think that was like one of the first points where I was like, okay, how am I going to incorporate this into my adult life? And I had already started teaching from a young age, like helping out in kids classes and whatnot. So it was just a matter of continuing that trajectory and, you know, my love of teaching and hopefully working with people and doing martial arts for a living. And
Wow,
that's how I got
that's
into the.
inspiring. Yeah, I mean, who can say, well, I want to do this for the rest of my life, right? So, I mean, absolutely, I think that that's a great way to kind of make a business out of something you love, right? I did notice a comment come in the chat. Feel free to add some comments or questions. We will be going over them at the end. Okay, so was there any kind of research that you performed when you were thinking about opening a business, just to kind of determine, is this business going to be feasible in Greater Sudbury? Is there going to be enough people that want to do this in our community?
So it's an interesting question because I think back then I was a little bit naive on, you know, how to start a business. It's almost like it didn't occur to me that I was looking to start a business. You know, so to be 100% honest, in the beginning there probably was not a lot of research being done prior to opening. I just knew I wanted to teach martial arts and I was like, okay, I need a place to do this. And you know, I was looking around and finally, because all we can afford at the time was, you know, renting gym space out of a little elementary school in Lively at the time. So we rented 2 days a week there, and we sort of started. And then as our membership grew, you know, we ended up. It was kind of like it was. I was lucky enough to recognize, oh, I need to get a bigger spot, or I need a couple of extra days a week, and we started renting like on a month-to-month basis in at the Walden daycare. So we actually rented in their basement. So, you know, I remember going in the first part of the night, all of our people would kind of move all the kids' toys out of the way. And then at the end of the night, we'd have to put them all back so to not disrupt their services in the morning. Um, and then I ended up buying my first home in my early 20s. And I kind of thought I was being smart at the time and said, okay, I'm going to have a small spot in the house to do martial arts, which ended up being the basement, to be honest. So, you know, I have a number of students that if you were to ask them about the history of the school, they'll talk about the basement days, or, you know, how they used to train in some guy's basement back in the days. And that was definitely me. And I think when I really clued in that there was, you know, more involved in running a business and the research was required is when we made the step to come out of the house and actually look to, you know, get our first lease. And then I think that's when I really thought, okay, now I'm going to have to figure out how do I negotiate a lease? Like, where do I go? How is it that is there even a market for this here in Sudbury? Like, am I biting off more than I can chew? And that's, I think, where I sort of started that process of, you know, learning about the research of martial arts. So that being said, I remember one of the first things I thought at the time, you know, in my limited knowledge, I was like, okay, so if there's a school over here, there's a school in that end of town, maybe I should open up in an end of town where there was no school. And, you know, I don't think it was necessarily a bad idea at the time, but it was very, very primitive in the research piece. But that's what we did. And, you know, it turned out okay for us. But, you know, it's from that point where I would see other schools growing and whatnot. And then I had to like think, okay, why is this happening? And then that's when I got my first mentor and business consultant type thing. So that's sort of a little bit of a background from literally like the grassroots where we started to like stepping into like, okay, now I'm going to look at this literally from a business perspective type thing. And how do I grow the business?
Yeah, no, what an incredible journey, right? Going from the basement to where you are now. And you know, thinking about geography, I think is a really, you said it's really basic, but it is still a really important part for businesses that need that visibility and that are going, people have to, well, they don't necessarily always have to go to the space. We could talk about more about your virtual options later. But you know, it is all about where you are in Sudbury and how far it is. You know, I've been a member of a gym that was in the South End, and that was just too far for me. You know, rush hour traffic and all that. So geography plays such a big part on determining where you're going to be. So good on you for looking that up before you starting your business, right? Okay, so based on your competition, you talked a little bit about how they were growing at the time, and you were looking into that. Why are they growing? When you looked at your competition, what did you determine you wanted to do differently in order to make yourself unique?
Okay. So again, another interesting question because I think I can kind of talk about some of the mistakes that I made in the beginning. You know, in the beginning, I would look at my, my competition or other academies, and I'd be like, oh, they do this very well, so I want to emulate that. It's almost like I wasn't thinking about how do I stand out from the competition at the time. I was trying to think of, I want to be just like this place who has a large school, large membership. I need to do the same thing or offer the same services. Um, it's not until, again, years later that I recognized that, if you're always following, you're not leading. So, you got to kind of learn to be innovative and learn to stand out so that, you become the leader in your industry, right? So, um, to make a long story short, and even in the beginning, I remember looking at other schools, and this was, again, once dating back into the late 90s, and most schools only offered one martial art, like at the time, and there was no schools that were offering multiple martial arts. Um, Luckily, because I literally was interested in everything, I had done kung fu, karate. I played in kickboxing, judo, wrestling all throughout high school and stuff. Like I had a varied interest, and there was a bit of a surge happening with MMA becoming mainstream via the UFC in the late 90s. And I remember, once again, traveling to some of the schools and seeing that the schools that were becoming more prominent offered more than one discipline. So when I came home, one of the things that we started doing was offering a grappling system and then a striking system. So I was trying to kind of separate myself from the competition at the time, where you can either join at this location where they have one martial art, or you can come to our place where we offer more than one martial art. And then eventually, as time went on, now that's kind of a common practice in most schools. Most schools offer more than one discipline, but at the time it was something for us that was innovative. I think another thing back then that was innovative and that we still take great pride in, literally like almost 30 years later, is the schedule. In the early 90s, classes, it wasn't common for classes to be offered on weekends, definitely not during the day, definitely not during the mornings back then. In Sudbury anyway, it wasn't common. So, we were one of the first schools to start offering a class on the weekend. And then again, as our schedule became more popular, some other schools may have started doing the same thing or offering similar schedules. And, even to this day, I still pride myself on having one of the most diverse, flexible schedules to meet our clients' needs, which can be a huge factor in them deciding whether or not they want to attend your academy type thing. So those are sort of the small things that we did in the beginning and even into now, to kind of make us stand out from our competitors.
Those are some great points, right? And do you think that your competitors, seeing that you offered more than one martial arts, do you think that they actually used you as an example to expand their services?
In the late 90s, 100%. Like I 100% believe that. And maybe not, literally thinking, oh, I'm going to do what Sudbury MMA is doing. I think that, just maybe in their market research, seeing, what was successful, that, modern academies were offering more than one product or one style of martial arts, they too decided to do the same thing. Me personally, I actually got the idea from a school in Toronto that had a whole bunch of martial arts gyms in it, type thing. And we were one of the first ones in Sudbury to do it, type thing.
And that's all about like looking at your competition, even if they are in Toronto, right? Like they're a perfect example to look at and see, wow, this is really great and innovative, and it's something we could bring to Sudbury. And I think that a lot of sports could learn from having a bit more variety, right? Because if you've never done martial arts before, how do you know which one you want to do, right? So having options of different styles is a great way to kind of find the one that you're best at and you want to really continue with. So, and same with your schedule. I mean, that's really wonderful that you're able to figure out, okay, well, not everybody can make specific times. So having a really diverse schedule is a great way to kind of point one of your strengths compared to your competition. And speaking of strengths, like have you ever done or considered like a SWOT analysis, right? We talked about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Has there been something like that?
100%, 100%. I kind of referenced in the beginning because like I think one of the things that if I was to be able to pass on is like, sometimes you can learn from other entrepreneurs' mistakes or other business owners' mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes are costly. So, like that's why I kind of referenced like in the beginning how my mindset was, and then how it is sort of now. So in the beginning, You know, definitely did I look at the SWOT analysis. I probably didn't know what I was doing a SWOT analysis at the time. Like I would just be like, oh, my strengths are this martial art and this martial art, so I'm going to offer those. My weaknesses are, you know, ABC, or the other school weaknesses are those, and I'm going to capitalize on that and try and offer my strengths as their weaknesses. You know, so people looking at, for example, the a schedule with only 3 days a week, they can look at my schedule with 7 days a week, and that would be our strength. Opportunities, same thing. You know, like I remember thinking, I'll give you an example, like childcare. And people are like, what does childcare got to do with martial arts? It's pretty integral, believe it or not. You know, we cater to a lot of different families, and sometimes they're looking for, you know, different programs that their kids can do. Some of them are during the summer, right? So, you know, you see that there's a need and opportunity for childcare, and you know, you're as a business looking to offer a better service to your clients, you can kind of offer that as well, right? One of the one of my favorite examples is during COVID, and because it's very recent, I think everybody online can kind of relate to it. They probably remember it very well. Instead of me talking about what happened in the 90s, the you know, COVID was obviously world pandemic, 2 years, affected a lot of businesses, ours included. This was super important for us. These analyses were super important for us on how we maintained. I think we were one of two, I think there's one other school, but one of two schools that literally we did not shut down during COVID. Now, that doesn't mean that we were doing, you know, illegal classes. That's not what I mean. I mean is, you know, we had to become innovative and do a shuffle pivot on, you know, what we can do to sustain our business type thing. So we went online. That was pretty much unheard of in Sudbury at the time, and we were I definitely remember we were the first school to offer online service. I had other people calling me, asking me how to do it, right? And which we were more than happy to share because I wanted martial arts to thrive throughout the pandemic as well. But you know, we went online with our classes, and that's kind of like one of the things that we had to look at is like, how are we going to offer this service? You know, what are our strengths? Well, our strengths are in our instructor or our instructor's ability to teach and verbalize, and you know, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to do that in person. You know, like I remember us teaching, and you know, there was family members working together, and we had that ability to, you know, verbally describe what we wanted them to do and keep them engaged. You know, I remember the threats, like when we first opened up, like because our gym was like, because our martial arts are normally taught in an enclosed environment. One of the environmental threats was, you know, COVID, that we couldn't have 30 people in the class. So I was like, you know what, guys, we are going to take our class outside, and we are going to make sure there's that 6 foot distance between our people, and we're going to set up bags 6 feet apart, and we're going to put out as many as we can outside to try and, you know, make sure that our business continues to hopefully thrive. And obviously, like, you know, sales and everything, you know, took a major hit during COVID. But I think even I look back at that, and I think, you know, all the things that we did to stay relevant, to be innovative, to work with our membership, engage our clients, and sort of stay relevant, even with our social media presence and everything, it almost probably paid dividends moving forward, you know, a couple of years after the pandemic's done. Like, people know who we are. We were probably the only martial arts school, you know, advertising at the time, and still marketing to our brand. So it kind of helped us become a little bit more of a household name in Sudbury type thing. So, and that was all done possible due to, you know, us using things like the SWOT analysis and analyzing how can we sustain and move even though we were in like the absolute worst time anyone in our generations have seen type thing. So it's probably one of my quick examples on that.
Yeah, and I do want to commend you and your, you know, and your business for the adaptability and resiliency of going through the pandemic and being able to offer all of those services, and even like teaching other businesses how you can do this too, right? And being really like a pillar in the, you know, martial arts community in Greater Sudbury. So like great on you for doing that. And back to your competition, you know, when you're comparing schedules, pricings of services, location, is there any kind of like, I don't know, like scouting that you do in order to compare yourself to all of the options that they might have?
Yeah. So I'm acutely aware of, you know, my direct competitions, prices, classes, schedules. I can probably tell everybody here what exactly they're, each one of them have. Um, and so by me being aware of that, it allows me to, take the steps to again stand out. For example, I'm one of the schools in town that has a variety of instructors, men, women. They teach both my adult classes, my kids' classes. It kind of like, I want to basically demonstrate the diversity of our team and, so that our clients can also connect with our team type thing, right? So, I mean, like, I think it's very, very important to, and I'm not saying in a bad way, but compare yourself to your competition, you know, and I've said this many, many times, when you have, and there's a lot of very good schools in town, when you have a lot of good schools in town, you kind of force each other to level up. So, like we set a bar here and then all of a sudden another school does this. And I'm like, okay, so now we got to level up again. And, we kind of push each other up and make each other better. And at the end of the day, it's each school gets better, each school benefits, and ultimately the clients have the best experience. So absolutely, I compare everything from what our academy does to what the other academies do. Not in a
Yeah,
negative, positive way.
absolutely. Leveling up, right? I like that word.
Hmm.
Yeah. And how important would you say would it be to like analyze and look at your indirect competitors, your direct competition being other martial arts studios, but indirect competition being other types of sports?
So it's interesting because I tell people this all the time, and I say, honestly, like martial arts academies are not my competition, and people kind of look at me, they're like, what do you mean? Such and such a school is doing the exact same thing. I'm like, yeah, you're right, but they're not my competition. I'm like, you ever go to a food court? All the restaurants are in the same vicinity. Like they're everybody goes there for food because they know they can have a choice, right? Um, when I think of competition, like sometimes I'm like, oh man, I know soccer season started last week, or sorry, 2 weeks ago. So, and I know that, Mondays and Wednesday nights is a popular soccer time for kids. And I'm like, man, that's directly involved in my class. So, what did I do last week? I put out an additional class that starts earlier than soccer, like, and I use my knowledge of what's happening with indirect competition to kind of sustain my own business. So people who really love martial arts and don't want to stop, but they also want to give their children a chance to run and play outdoors and do something different. If they really love martial arts, now I've made it possible for them to do both. you know I'll even do things like, okay, we have a summertime kids. I know kids are not coming out as much to classes, so like, because they're going to do other sports, so we have like a little bit of a reduced membership option for the kids who want to come less frequently than they did throughout the school year. So I think knowing how your indirect competitors do business is important for your business. I'm not saying that you have to make every decision based on what someone else is doing, but it's good to know. Like I really like some of the things that I've seen from some of the different businesses in town, specifically on how they do some of their kids programmings. And there's areas where we're like, you know what, that's a great idea. Let's emulate that and kind of incorporate it into our business plans as well. And sometimes you watch and you're like, yeah, you know what, I'm not sure if that's a route that we would take. And so maybe we'll do something a little bit different and appeal to a bit of a different market type thing. So absolutely important to kind of, I think there's a fine line because you get some people when they first start watching their competitors, they can almost become obsessed and they're like, oh, so and so had 10 people in their class today. Like I only had 8. They must be doing like, and that's becomes unhealthy type thing. But if you look at it from a position of, what, how can I learn from this and how can I work to make my business better in a positive light? I think it's very, very important and very healthy to kind of have a good understanding of what, both your direct competition and indirect competitors are doing.
Those are some great points, John. And speaking of like the indirect competition, like you talked about, soccer, for example, I think a lot of people in your position might completely overlook that, right? And think, no, I need to only kind of look at what other, martial arts studios are doing. But, I think kind of looking at as a whole seems like a really smart business move on your part. And you did talk a little bit about a little bit about this, but I wanted to ask, like, how does analyzing your competition when it comes to business compare to analyzing your competitor in a fight, for example?
Interesting. It's funny, you're not the first person to ask me that, how to get asked that. And I tell people, like, here's the reality. If you see anybody who has competed at the highest levels, um, and you know, in all fairness, like I've competed all over the world. I've competed at world amateur events. I've done some professional competition as well. And I think that when people take that type of dedication and they've demonstrated the skill set to apply, you know, the dedication, the time management, everything that they need to do to become successful at a competitive level, those people become, I don't want to say dangerous, but they become dangerous in a business level. Because what happens is they take all those attributes that made them successful in competition and they apply it to now business. You know, so it's like I kind of joke around sometimes with my friends who own businesses, and I say my goal is to submit the other businesses. You know, like just like, you know, as a competitor you want to submit your opponent. My goal is to do that in business, and I'm sure their goal is to do the same thing. And it's all in fun when we say that. But you know, so when we talk about the analyzing piece, you know, like number one, every trait that I had as a competitor, I bring into an entrepreneur and a business owner. I will work relentlessly to do whatever I need to do. Um, and then when it comes terms with anyone who's done competition, I think everybody will attest to this. If there's some people watching this on the call, anytime they've had to compete against anybody, like what's the first thing they do? They pick up their phone and they start searching on that person and seeing everything they can learn about that person, right? So like I essentially do almost the same. Like, you know, when I want to break out a new program or I want to make a change to my schedule, one of the first things I do is that little bit of market research and say, okay, first of all, if let's say, I'll take a very easy example. Let's say I want to put a 5 a.m. class on a Sunday, you know, like, is there anybody else doing this? Number one. If there is and they're successful, oh great, maybe there's a market for my area too. If they're not doing it, what's the reason they're not doing it? Is it something that's being overlooked, or has multiple people tried this and it doesn't work? You know, so these are the types of things that, you know, that I'll take a look at, and I'll do that with, you know, the same way I used to approach competitors and whatnot, where I used to research them and research their team and research their affiliations. I do the same thing in business. If I want to make a new program or make a decision that I have to change something within the business, prior to doing that, there's nothing that's done, you know, quickly. It's like, okay, let's take the time to do, you know, the SWOT analysis and make sure that things are going to be moving forward in a positive manner, not just a rash knee-jerk reaction to something I might have seen. I think so.
Yeah, I think you have that great perspective, right? Of being a background as someone who's like competed professionally, and then also applying all that dedication, drive, and commitment to, like, you know, having a business. So, um, we've talked a lot about competition, but what about your ideal customer, right? And determining who you'd be servicing to. Has that changed over the years?
Again, 100%. Um, it's very interesting because I think, like, you know, when in my early 20s, when I was heavily involved in competition, you know, it's almost like I had this bias, if for a lack of a better term, was I was almost looking to find people to train with that were going to help me prepare for competition, etc. As time has gone on, you know, number one, you learn like that those people may not be the ideal client type thing, you know. And I think that for me, as my personal values and morals have changed over the years, what I look for in a client, and even the people, because I mean, like, to be honest, like, I spend so much time at my academy that, you know, the people that I want to surround myself with are, you know, families, right? These are the people that are going to come in, they're going to bring their families in to train. There's friendships that are developed, you know, there's bonds that are developed, there's social networks that are developed. And not only does that lead to a help with, like, retention, to be honest, it also makes for a better experience within the academy when you have people that are, and not saying that competitors are selfish, but, you know, like, you don't have people that are only there for their own benefit, trying to, you know, win a world championship type thing, right? You have people that are there to for that social experiment and or experience, and to want to engage with friends and other families that are there. So, people that are coming in feel very welcome. And, essentially over the years, I've learned that these are probably my ideal clients.
Mm. And over the years, have there been any challenges you've had to address when it comes to, your target audience and who you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, like as the membership grew, if I'm perfectly honest, probably like in the late 90s, like our gym was very, very competitive. Um, and then, as we brought in more recreational members type thing, it was like learning to find that balance. Like, how do you offer a product and appeal to both like a brand new person just starting out and that person who's getting ready to go compete at Worlds, for example. And it took me a while to figure that out, and I've probably only really think got a good grasp on it over the last 5 years. And once again, that's from doing market research, going to visit the schools who have these huge groups of recreational members, and then still have that, top 2% of competitors in the world. So it took us a while to figure that out, and, make it so that we have classes that appeal to everybody, and classes where, if somebody wants to go and train super, super hard, like those classes are, to be honest, not even on the schedule. And then, we have our regular classes where, it's for everybody to come and enjoy the benefits of martial arts type things. So I think working through some of those challenges and making sure that my membership were happy with the product that they were receiving in terms of the classes, that was tough work for a little while, like, to try to find that balance, and then even with the recreational members, like I'll give you an example. I have some recreational members that have been with us for, man, like 20 years, some of them, and they're very, very skilled. Well, they like to have their advanced classes as well, right? So, don't miss for people that are listening, like, just because someone's recreational doesn't mean that they're not skilled, right? So it's trying to find that happy medium for everyone's classes. And then I can talk all day about kids classes, and trying to, make classes that are age appropriate for, the 3 to 5 year olds, the 5 to 7 year olds, the 8 to 11 year olds, the 11 to 15 year olds. That's a tough group, and then, moving into the adult classes. So yeah, there's been a lot of challenges for sure on that. I think we're doing better, so that's good.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of different organizations that cater to such a wide age group, or different people from different backgrounds or different goals when it comes to training, probably have very similar, um, not issues, but like a bit of difficulty in figuring out what is the perfect medium to satisfy every customer, right? And whether you're selling a product or a service, or sports, that adaptability again to change and modify based on what the feedback the customers are getting is going to be really important, which moves into the next question. How do you gather feedback from your
Oh,
customers, and how do
that,
you change and improve?
that's a good question, but like I'll just kind of backtrack a little bit from you, and I'll kind of segue back into it. But you're right, like, and I know I've talked a lot about classes, but like, realistically, like a martial arts academy is a lot off, nowadays offer a lot more than just the classes, right? So I'll give you an example, like merchandise, as a person who's almost 50, what I think is cool and look for style of t-shirts and sweaters may not be what, our clients, for example, who are 20 think is cool. You know what I mean? Like, I think Crocs are cool. They don't. I don't know what's wrong with them, right? So, like a lot of times, like when we get our merchandise made, even like another easy, funny example is like those hats, with the flat rims, like, that's popular. Like I still prefer to bended hats or whatever, but like, as a business owner, you want to kind of make sure your clients are happy and getting the product that they want. So, segue back into your question, how do we find that out, man? I tell you, like, there's been a lot of movement in technology, right? And, so we do use a little bit of technology, like, we'll have some assistance technology wise that goes out to our clientele, asking them for feedback. And you'd be surprised at how much of a response we get. Sometimes we get, just nothing, or sometimes we'll get people that'll give us a lot of feedback, and it's always welcomed, whether it's positive or negative type thing. And I can tell you with 100% honesty, I review every one of those comments. We're not so big that I can't do that at this point. Like, I'm able to look at every one of these comments for the people who leave them, and that's one of the main ways that we get feedback from our people on a consistent basis. And then, of course, like one of the things that I encourage in our instructor training is to develop the relationships with our clients and kind of make sure that there's an open communication with them. I want clients to be able to come to us with any type of feedback, whether good or bad, and hey, great class, loved it. And I'm like, okay, cool. So, hey, I hate your music. Oh, okay, I better change it up. Hey, the this was good, that was good. And I think by having that open dialogue and building that foundation of respect with your clients and that safe atmosphere, you get a lot more feedback than you think. So a little bit of a combination between old school relationship building, and then of course using some modern technology to help us get some feedback from people if they want to be a little bit more anonymous type thing.
I think that's really important, right? For specifically when you're working with people one-on-one or in group settings, is getting to know how can this be improved, how can this get better. Now, my next question has to do a little bit about like market trends and change in the industry. You did talk about your journey through COVID, which was a huge trend or change in the industry. Are there any other industry trends that you've seen that have allowed you to adapt and modify over the years?
Yeah, so I mean, so this is gonna sound funny, but like, how there's like what do people call those? Like the people who do Star Wars or whatever, they have like the con with they go to these events where like
Like a
everybody
convention.
convention, there we go.
Okay.
There's often business conventions for martial arts, and they're held all over North America. And we make a point to try and attend these events. And at these events, there's people that come in and they're introducing you to new technology of equipment. They're introducing you to new software technology to help you manage the business better. You have guest speakers that come in and talk to you about the industry trends, like what's popular in classes and what's not popular, or what's losing popularity in classes. And for me, like, we try to attend one of these at least minimally every year type thing. And it really helps us bring, what's, I hate to use the word modern, but what's more modern in the industry and kind of bring it home type thing. Both like for the classes for the students, and as well as the technology piece, or what I call the back end piece on running the business, what helps us run the business sometimes. So that's probably the best and easiest example I can give on what you can do to stay current in the trends. And there's lots. I think, sorry, I got a couple more. That I think people would benefit from: getting a mentor, and like find someone. There's a saying in the industry: find someone who's where you want to be, and you can develop a mentor or develop a mentee mentor relationship with them. I've had numerous mentors over the year. I still have two that are like very prominent in my circle. And if you can, a consultant. Like, there's people that this is what their job is. Actually, for every person that's on this call today, or anyone who's going to be watching this in the future, in my opinion, have a vested interest in business. You're already taking the steps to want to do this. Like, you're taking great advantage of these resources that are available within our city. So kudos to you for that. But that's exactly what you need to do, and you need to adapt that forever learning approach all the way through. So those are just a couple of things that I do anyway to try and stay current in the trends.
Yeah, that's excellent feedback. And I'm happy you mentioned mentors, right? Because at the Innovation Quarters with our incubator program, we really value the time that the mentors spend with the people that are in our program, and same with the Regional Business Center and some of their programming as well. So there is, a few different organizations, including NORCAP, for example, who offer mentoring. But finding that business mentor can happen through a program, or it could happen naturally, right? Going to a convention and meeting somebody who maybe has a lot more experience, who would be willing to work with you and kind of help you. Yeah.
I wish that these programs, this incubator program, would have been available when I first started. I was too naive a little bit at the time. Like, I was like, oh, what are they going to teach me about martial arts? Well, I can tell you right now, most people get into business because of a passion. They love martial arts. They love whatever passion they have, and they want to cook for a living, or they want to share their passion with the world, and then they realize, oh, wait a minute, what's marketing, and what's taxes, and what's a lease, who's going to help me with my accounting, how do I pay HST? There's so many avenues. So like, it's amazing that you guys offer this for people to start out, because it's definitely going to give them a leg up in starting their business.
Yeah, for sure, 100%, right? You can't be the master of everything, right? You could be, what's that expression? Jack of all trades, master of none, or right? So, you might be the master in what you enjoy doing and what you enjoy offering as a business owner, but getting that support to help you with all the other aspects is really important to be successful. So what about you? What's the next chapter in your entrepreneurial journey?
So it's interesting because I'm always looking at ways to expand Sudbury MMA. So like now on a surface level, people probably think, oh, you mean by offering more programs? I'm like, not necessarily. Like, like we've recently, and we work with other people doing this too. We recently looked to try and expand our tournament scene. So I remember, when I was younger, like there was never any ways for people to do, jujitsu tournaments, kickboxing tournaments, and definitely nothing for kids at the time. And it's something that, years ago, I made a commitment to myself. I was like, I want to bring this to the north. I want people to have the ability to have a venue to practice and do this and compete at a regional level. Because we would bring our guys initially, we'd bring them to Toronto, or sometimes we travel to the States, and they didn't have that regional experience, and then we'd go and compete against people who did, and it was to be honest, it wasn't great. So I wanted to create that venue and give everybody in the north an opportunity to have that regional experience. So like that's something that we've been focusing a little bit of time into, and it's been very, very good. And like it's amazing how it brings the community together, and the participants, doesn't matter where they're from, whether they're from different academies in town or whether they're from out of town. Like everybody loves the opportunity to be able to share a passion that everybody loves together, right? So that's one of the areas. And then to be honest, like when they talk about like streams of income, they always say you should have more than one. So like I'm kind of like trying to dabble into that a little bit with a consultant slash mentor, and to try and see like what can I do to not just be reliant on, let's say, memberships, because memberships fluctuate, right? So like what other things can I do to bring a different stream of income into the academy type thing? So it's like, again, just kind of like what I said before, I'm trying to learn and expand my knowledge, and hopefully build the business and make it a little bit more profitable type thing.
That's wonderful. That's great. I loved hearing about the revenue streams, right? You did talk about the merch before, and I'm sure there's a lot of different possibilities that can bring different sources of income, because you're right, what if we get hit with, I mean, would hope not, but what if we get hit with another closed down COVID style, right? Where you got to shift, right? You got to change different ways you can, generate that money. So like, I'm really happy you mentioned that. And as a final piece of advice, what would you like to leave the group?
I think like one of the things that's important to note is don't be afraid to fail. There's a saying, like don't be afraid to fail forward. I cannot tell you how many things I've tried and it doesn't work, like, or it didn't work. And I tell people sometimes, like, like, so in fighting, we have a saying, don't let the wins go to your head and don't let the losses go to your heart. Okay, so it's almost, to me, it's the same thing in business. If I try something and it doesn't work and it was a fail at, if I put on a woman's self-defense seminar and like, I get 2 people sign up and I'm like, oh, it didn't work out. That's okay. You know what? It's water on the bridge. We move on and we work on something else. Like don't let the losses go to your heart, right? So don't be afraid to try new things. And I think most importantly, find a mentor or a consultant that can help you achieve your goals, like, and they can kind of guide you along those ways. Don't be scared to ask for advice and help. It will pay dividends in the long run, 100% guaranteed.
I love that. I feel like we need that on a t-shirt. Don't let the wins get to your head. Don't let the losses get to your heart. New merch idea.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, John. We're going to open this these last few minutes for a question period. So please, folks, under the chat, please type in any questions you have, and we'll start with the first one. Someone named Jasmine mentioned that they're interested in learning Aikido. Is this maybe something that, Sudbury MMA would eventually look to offer?
Yeah, the Aikido is a very traditional martial art. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have anybody at Sudbury MMA with the experience to teach Aikido. There was a gentleman named Lawrence Chan in Sudbury for years that taught Aikido, and I don't think it's being taught anymore. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't think there's any Aikido in Sudbury right now. Although there's one gentleman named Guy Ferron, so shout out to Guy if he's still teaching. I'm not sure if he's not, but he used to teach Aikido in Sudbury as well.
Any more questions from the group? And while you're typing those questions, I'll ask, John, how is it that you found a mentor?
I think it was one of those things that sort of happened by fluke, for lack of a better term. The being part of an association, like so our school's kind of affiliated with several different schools, and I really connected with. There's two individuals specifically that I really connected with, and one of those individuals at the time he owned 7 martial arts schools, and I was flabbergasted. I was like, how can somebody own 7 martial arts schools? I'm like, how do you teach every class? You can't. It's impossible. And that was sort of like, one of the beginnings of the conversations type thing. So I think like just getting out and networking with like-minded people is probably a big piece. It's like I think you mentioned it earlier. You might meet somebody, and they're most people that are I know it's going to sound crazy, but most people that are kind of successful want other people to be successful too. Like there's no animosity. There's not people that's not jealous. There's no jealousy. Like people are like, hey, no, like if I can do this, you can do this. Anybody can do this, and they want people to be successful for sure. Just noticed in the chat, Jen saying hello. Hi, Jen. Really fast. Thank you for your comments, Stefan. Appreciate that.
Another question from Jen. How do you deal with negativity from competitors?
I think this is where it's important to have a strong coaching team. Like competitors, I often say like they can be emotional. They put a lot of work into their craft. They love what they do. They put a lot of time in it. They feel as though they sacrifice everything to follow that passion. And if they have a bad training session, if they don't get a result that they want or whatnot, like it could be very disheartening. So like to be honest with you, like I've taken quite a few different coaching courses on the sports psychology, and I have regular briefings with my when I say competitors, like I have a lot of competitors, but like what I would consider like my serious competitors, people who compete like at an international level type thing, I have pretty regular briefings with them, or checkpoints with them, to make sure that their mindset is okay. And sometimes it we have to talk about some of the negative things that I've heard or I've seen, and those difficult conversations. Sometimes you have to have those, and it's because we care. And once you develop that trust with your competitors, you can sometimes address any of those negative issues that come up. And I'll be honest with you, like they're not always fun conversations, but I think everybody in every line of work at one point or another has to have a difficult conversation with a coworker, a peer, somebody. So I think it's just no different than anybody in our field. We have to have that sometimes too. And I think as long as you have the respect of your client base, you can have those awkward conversations sometimes and still get a positive outcome.
That's some great advice. Like you said, not just for, working with competitors, but with anybody you might have a, disagreement with. And question from Jasmine, what are some recommendations for asking if someone's interested in being mentored? So how do you approach them?
So like, I guess it's kind of like if you know the person or not, that's going to be number one. I don't know if someone's writing in the chat type thing. I don't see that. But yeah, like I'm always a fan of a little bit more of a direct approach, so the sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But then there's no There's no illusions as to what I'm thinking. So like, I've asked people in the past, like, hey, would you ever be interested in going for a coffee and, chatting about some of the trials and tribulations of, you building your business. And to be honest with you, a lot of people are very open to sharing information type of thing. Or if they're too busy, because often that's probably the only one obstacle is sometimes like they're busy, they're very open to kind of pointing you in the direction. Like, they'd say, hey, you know what? I don't have time, but like, you know what, this person is someone who's helped me a lot and they're amazing if you want to get in contact with them type thing. So I think, hey man, if you're interested, don't be shy to ask. You never know unless you ask.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice, John. And not just that, but like the idea of mentorship is very big in the entrepreneurial community. So people who have been in a business for a while, who potentially could be a mentor for you, have likely had a mentor themselves or understand the concept of mentorship. So it wouldn't come across weird if you were to establish that relationship, meet someone and say, listen, I really admire your business sense and the way you've operated your business. Would you ever be interested in maybe having a few meetings a year with me and just kind of working through a few, nicks that I have in my business that I think you could, help me as a mentor. And oftentimes they'll take that as a compliment, right? To them to see that someone admires them so much that they're willing to work with them in the capacity. And I think it's just a great way to make those bonds, strengthen those relationships and to really kind of grow as a business owner. So
100%. And at the end of the day, like I think, especially like what I would call smaller businesses like myself, like a lot of our foundation is built on relationships, right? So like the more relationships that you can build with everybody in the community, the better it is for not only your business but even as your own personal and professional development type thing. So 100% got to agree with that, man. The don't be shy, ask them. Let's love to meet 4 times a year, 5 times a year, network. It's amazing.
exactly. Well, thank you so much, John Cole. This has been a very insightful presentation. Thank you for everybody who attended and who commented in the chat. I'll be sending those of you who participated, we'll be sending you a survey just to see how everything went. I appreciate your feedback. And please, stay tuned for our next event. Take a look at our website to register for that. But again, thank you so much, John.
Oh, guys, thank you so much for having me, and I hope that I've hoped that I was able to help somebody out even a little bit. So thank you so much for having me, guys.
Okay, have a great day, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.